Recording in progress.
To the April 24th, 2023 Special Board of Aldermen meeting. Would everyone please join with me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible. Roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka.
Here.
Alderwoman Tice.
Here.
Alderwoman Sims.
Here.
Alderman Waggy.
Here.
Alderman Gould.
Here.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Here.
Alderwoman O'Neill. Alderman Shelton.
Here.
All members are present.
Great, thank you. Any changes to the agenda? Any objection to approving the same by acclamation? Seeing none, it will be so approved. Thank you. Let's move down to citizen comments. Anybody in the public care to address the board? Now is the time to do so. You'll be given up to 3 minutes. Thank you. That brings us down to item 5, new business, update to Lee Wind Trail.
All right, this is why we're all here. Unfortunately, we don't have any good news for you. I know that we've been at this for a while working on the trail. You know, there's 3 slope failure areas. The one to the north is what I'm identifying as failure 3. That one's been fixed, so that one didn't require scour locks, some revetment and stuff like that. The other 2 areas, which would be just north of the Litzinger Bridge on the east side of Rosalie, and then the one in the middle, which is failure area 2, those have or had unsuitable soil. So it was more like a topsoil, like a real mushy clay that you couldn't just put the scour locks on. They would settle and they just wouldn't be stable. So that's been hauled out. They put in rock, but then as they're working on area 2, which is the one in the middle, to the north of area 2, they identified a seam that was pulling away from the toe, the bottom of the slope. So that's about 40 additional feet that needs to be repaired. And the best way that SCI is identified as repairing it is just to do the same means and methods, which would be the scour lock baskets. However, that comes at about $106,000 additional cost to do to 40 feet. If we do nothing, maybe it'll stay somewhat stable for a while, but then if it fails, then we'll be back out there and it could undermine the trail and the road just like the other areas we're doing. So that's kind of the gist of it. Today they actually did run into some rock too. I know Castle's here if you had any additional questions on this $106,000 change, but we do have some rock. SCI came out, they identified the rock as like a limestone, that they can remove some of that rock, create a stable shelf, and then put the scour locks on that.
So you're needing a approval by the board for a change order in the amount of $106,000?
I believe that's what we're discussing, and yes.
Okay. And how's the timeline looking for the other 3 that are?
I'll tag team this one since I don't want to speak out of character for the timing.
Hello, Christy Brinkman with Castle Contracting. It's great to see you all again. So our timeline, we're actually on schedule. We continue to make great progress on the project despite some of the challenges with both weather and soils. Thankfully, your amazing city team has been incredibly responsive as we've run into these issues, and we've been able to just keep moving. So we ended up hauling out quite a bit of that material from both the area to the south along Litzinger Bridge and to that middle area. And then unfortunately ran into the rock today. So with getting SCI involved quickly as well, so thank you all for having them as your partner on geotechnical services. They've also been incredibly responsive. We've been able to get them out quickly and identify how we can move forward and with a solution that's going to keep the integrity of that area and also be at no additional cost to the city. So with it being a small area of rock in that one area, Castle is going to absorb that cost so that we can keep the project moving forward. We anticipate it probably being somewhere between $3,000 and $4,000, but we're not going to issue a change order for that, knowing that we just want this project to keep moving forward, and we've incurred plenty of other issues already. We would like to just keep moving forward. Our goal is to keep the project on track, and as of right now, we are. We did talk a little bit about with that second area that it would be our recommendation that the city keep a contingency budget of around $15,000 should we run into rock on this second 2A area, if you will.
Okay. And the original contract, I don't know if you can speak to this or if Eric can. I know we're going to be making an application to FEMA. Is that correct? But the thought is that this change order would not qualify. If you want to speak to that a little bit, Eric, please.
I can try, yes. Yes, we have made the application to FEMA, and I just lost my computer. That happens to me a lot. So basically, we've submitted about $4.5 million to FEMA. They have approved 63,000 of that. We've received that funding already. The rest of it is still being reviewed by FEMA. This portion of the request, which is the trail, is one of those sections that are still being reviewed by FEMA. With that being said, they will not approve this. We kind of already had a quick conversation with FEMA. They said, unfortunately, you can't tell since this wasn't part of the original ask, and they can't tell if this is new damage versus the damage from before, that we're gonna have to take the hit on it.
And what's the percentage of reimbursement, generally speaking?
75% for FEMA, 10% for SEMA. I talked to the SEMA representative. We'll get one check from SEMA at the end. FEMA, we submitted 8 projects. We've gotten 3 approved. SEMA waits till all the projects get approved and finished before they submit. So we'll get a check from SEMA probably in a year and a half. So we'll wait on that one, but that's only 10% of the total cost.
Okay. Have any questions? Yeah, let's go with Alderwoman O'Neill.
Yeah, this may be more for Dan. I'm curious, you made a comment about finding limestone and taking the limestone out, where it would seem like having rock there would stabilize it. So can you satisfy my curiosity?
It's the fractured pieces. So they'll take away the fractured pieces, and then it's a solid shelf of limestone that's under it. So that is, they don't want to put it on anything that's kind of broken up that could shift. It's the stable pieces that'll remain. So
I was just picturing a shelf, so that
Yep.
makes sense. Thank you.
Alderman Gould.
Yes, so that, Eric, as you've just walked away, sorry. Get your steps in too, I guess. I thought I'd heard you speak to some of the reimbursements from FEMA and SEMA as preventative in nature as well, and that can be done ongoing.
There is a mitigation.
This seems like we've identified a potential failure. It's not a total failure yet, but we're going to do preventative to keep it from failing.
There is a mitigation program that you can do once everything with FEMA's done. So we have told FEMA that we're interested in mitigation, especially that section of the trail. Mitigation gives you only a 10% reimbursement.
Okay.
So we will be tracking that and submitting that as part of mitigation at
Down the
end.
road.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Alderman Tice.
So I guess this is a question for Dan or Christie, but what assurance do we have that when we keep going north, that this is gonna, it's not gonna just be this domino of stuff falling into the creek?
Yeah, that's our biggest concern, is that what we want to do is ensure that the solution that we're putting forth here is going to prevent future issues. So what we've identified in this area, it does take it to where it shears back off. So we would anticipate that this would allow for the way that the water is flowing to hit that scour, and it should be a much better solution in actually giving you a little bit more longevity around that creek, around that bend in the creek. The challenge that we've talked about since the beginning is that this particular body of water takes on a 6-mile radius from the county. So you are getting incredible volumes coming through what you would think of as a pretty small creek. And so we would anticipate that, to Eric's point, a broader mitigation study would probably be something that we would recommend in the future to allow for a more holistic approach to some of those areas that are further up the creek. that we've identified as being, the fourth slope failure that we had identified as just being cost prohibitive to fix. We would recommend that maybe you do a study to identify a more holistic way to address some of the other areas of the creek. But we would anticipate that this would be something that would give you a really strong base for this particular part of the creek.
Thank you.
Alderman Weggie, did you have your hand up?
Christy, will you have to re-coordinate this with MSD and Army Corps of Engineers?
Yes. So we can go through our, we have a Section 13 national permit for the Army Corps of Engineers. So we will continue to go through that permit for that piece of it. And then MSD will submit as a field change. They do not have an approval process for this. We went as a courtesy review for the previous round, so we will submit this as a field change for the secondary round just to keep the project moving forward and prevent any additional delays from that standpoint. And then we have already spoken with SEI about the bat habitat that was a big driving factor for keeping us moving forward, and we don't have any issues with the tree clearing for this particular piece. So we've already tried to make sure that we've looked at any potential hiccups to prevent us from moving forward.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Alderman Buckmuller. Sorry.
I don't know who can talk to the cost on this, but we've got the 106,000 in change order, but then it says additionally there are design costs of over 44,000. Is that in the 106, or is that needed to be added to the 106? The original design, or?
Yes, that was the original design and survey work. So we don't anticipate invoicing any additional design work for this piece. We will have some design work, but it'll be minimal in order to just get a construction document that our team can extend out. So we don't anticipate charging the city anything for that piece.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Puff.
The $15,000 that you talked about as a possible cushion, is that part of the 100 that would be added?
No, so what we put into the 106 is what we would be doing. So we're anticipating that we would have to mitigate unsuitable soils in that area as well. When we put this number together last week, we had not encountered any rock, nor did we anticipate encountering any rock, given that everything that we have run into date has been mush, to use a very technical geotech term. So we did not anticipate that there would be any rock. So that's something that we would not want in our base bid, but we would want the city to hold that number should we encounter any of that, and we would submit that as a change order.
Very good, thank you.
Okay. Alderman Gould.
Just one more question, Christy. You talked about tree clearing, and I just have to ask. So we don't think that any of the tree clearing that has been done may have contributed to some erosion in this area or anything like that?
No, so this area is actually upstream of all of the work that we've done, with the exception of that small area where we just put in riprap. So this area, because of where it is in proximity to the other areas, we asked, that was the first question I asked SCI, was is there any way that some of the other work could have impacted this? And the geotechnical engineer's answer was no, because of where it is located along the creek and where the other work is. There's no way that it could have impacted. The challenge is that the soil is a really poor quality. It's great topsoil. So if anybody needs it for their garden, you can back your truck up and we'll give you a load. But it's really poor quality as far as getting compaction. So whenever they established this channel 50 plus years ago, they didn't have the same kind of equipment to be able to get the compaction that we would typically want to get today to ensure that you're going to have a stable slope. And so what happens over time is as the water rises, it's not a huge problem, but then when it drops significantly and quickly, when we've had these really heavy rain events, it basically sucks that soil back out. And so that's what we're having with this undermining of the toe at this point. And so we end up with these voids, and then that's where we've had these failures. And so I think because of the poor soil quality, that's where we've seen some of these issues. So it's less about any of the other work and more about just the general nature of the soil quality and lack of compaction that we have along here, and then some of the slopes, and over time is, again, it's catching a huge volume of water from around the county. It's it's kind of the perfect storm, if you will.
And you mentioned the potential of doing a larger mitigation study. You're confident that the method of this repair would be fit into that, right?
Yes.
It's not like we're going to do this and then come up with a mitigation study and go, you know what, we're going to dig all that back up and return.
No, everything that we have done would be something that we would have identified as areas that we would be able to loop back into a larger project, if you will. And we have worked very closely with SCI, the geotechnical engineer, and with a number of other vendors, with the Corps of Engineers, again, to ensure that this is not something that you would ever have to take back out. Our goal is that what we're providing to you is a really good use of your taxpayer dollars, and that it's something that's going to enhance the longevity of this as a body of water that is governed by the Corps of Engineers. So we have taken a lot of care and did a lot of research to ensure that this would be the right fix for this challenge.
Thank you. Anybody else? If not, could we get a motion to approve the change order in the amount of $106,000?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second for the change order,
Plus,
plus the $15,000 in contingency.
Same motion.
Same motion. Okay, thank you. All right, so we've got a motion to approve the change order in the amount of $106,000 plus up to $15,000 in contingency. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill? Alderman Shelton?
Yes.
Motion carries by a vote of 8-0.
Great, thank you. Brings us down to citizen comments. Anybody in the audience care to address the board? Now is the time to do so. We have none? All right. Seeing no further business, we are adjourned.